So welcome today. Happy to have everybody here. Excited to be talking to everybody here on this call and with the panelists. We're going to be doing our Atlassian Team 22 recap webinar. So let's get this kicked off a little bit about the webinar. So we are recording. You probably got the message, and we will be sharing the recording after the webinar. Our goal is today, but nobody likes it when I say that. So our goal is today or tomorrow. So you should have a recording of this webinar. We will also be sending out the slides, and you'll notice the slides in this deck are very thin because it's going to be a bit more conversational. However, when we do share the slides, we will fill those in with our notes so that you have more detailed notes of what we talked about. And then, like any good webinar, we will be doing Q&A at the end. If you're new to Zoom, welcome to the world. But there is a Q&A button down at the bottom. Post your questions there. And if you have any questions or problems during the session, put it out in chat, where our team here will be happy to help you as well. So with that, just a little bit of an introduction to ISOs. So we started in 2005 doing custom software development, and we bought the Atlassian tools to run our practice. So once we started doing that and introducing the Atlassian tools to our customers, they all of a sudden became more interested in our tools and our process and our methodology than our custom code. So we said, hey, this is interesting. Let's go help customers solve problems on the Atlassian toolset. We joined the program in 2008 and haven't looked back. So where we are today is we are a Platinum Atlassian Solution Partner. We are specialized with Atlassian at scale, Agile at scale. We also have our cloud specialization, and we're working on our ITSM specialization. We're 3-time Partner of the Year award winners. We're very proud of that, and we help organizations all across the whole stack of the Atlassian tools. That's our sole focus. Most of our customers come to us through, hopefully this journey sounds a little bit familiar to you. You start using Jira, and before you know it, you start adding more and more pieces along the way. You add Confluence, you get integrations going along, and before you know it, you've created a mission critical system. And then from there, it just gets more complex, and you start having multiple instances. Maybe there's M&A in your organization. You have multiple tools doing the same thing, and now you're at an enterprise solution. And we talk to our customers all along this journey, and a lot of them come to us through any stage in this journey, and we really help them along. But what's really important for us is it is so much more than tools. We talk about tools at a foundation level, but it's really people and practices that are leaning on these tools to help drive value at organizations. So we spend a lot of time working with folks. Yeah, we want to get the tools right, but what we really want is for you guys to help get that success and reach that success. So without further ado, there was the ISOs commercial. So thank you for bearing with me. But our webinar promise is this will not be a redo of Team 22. They did a lot of great recording. You can go watch the videos out there. We're not going to say the same things that they said. We're going to highlight what we thought was important. We're going to give our good, honest interpretation of what we saw. We're not going to be Atlassian shills. We want to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and of course, allow time for QA. I'd like to introduce the panelists that are going to be speaking today as well. So I'm Thad West, didn't do a proper introduction, CEO here at ISOs Technology. I'd like to introduce Tracy Walton. She's Director of our Agile Services. Tracy.
Hey, everybody. Happy to be here.
There we go. Also joining us is Nick Sommerfeld. Nick is one of our professional services lead consultants. He's out on the front lines working with our clients every day.
Hey, everyone.
Hey. Then we have another Nick. We have Nick Nader. Nick Nader helps to design some of the complex solutions we deliver to our customers. Nick, you want to jump on and say hi?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Great. And then finally, and last but not least, we have Sarah. Sarah is one of our technical trainers. Sarah had a great perspective at Team 22. She led some of the classes there and had a great experience and brings that perspective as well. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to get us kicked off. And from my perspective, I was kind of covering the big news. And so when I was when I was heading out to Summit, I was, my bold predictions were, hey, look for more announcements of acquisitions, look for, really big, giant leaps forward. And that's what I was really looking for. I think we got kind of spoiled in the last team events that we saw some of those things. And none of that happened. I was taken a little bit aback. I was like, wow, okay. And then I kind of sat and listened to the message, and I got energized. Now, they did bring back some pieces. They brought back, last year they announced Point A. So if you're not familiar with Point A, it's the way that they release alpha and beta products out into the market. And what they brought as some of the highlight features in the big news were really the maturity of those Point A products. So last year they announced Team Central. They rebranded it Atlas. I know the team today will be talking a lot about it, but there was a lot of energy and buzz around Atlas. And again, I don't want to spoiler alert, but that was pretty exciting. There's also product discovery coming out of that, Compass, which again was introduced last year, but they've just continued to mature these products. And there was also the announcement of Atlassian Analytics and Data Lake. And I think as anybody that uses the Atlassian products knows that the reporting kind of sucks. So, this is Atlassian's acknowledgement of like, we know, and we're going to address that. So I was pretty excited when I reflected upon it. When my initial disappointment of no big acquisition was announced, I started to think, hey, this is a software company that's been doing it for 20 years. And sometimes you need to retrench, and you need to really build on your feature set on what you have. It's not always about the new and the shiny. And I got more and more excited the more I tuned in and watched that.
Are you saying, Thad, that we shouldn't read into this too much, that there wasn't so much big news?
I wouldn't. This is why I think this is part of their secret sauce, is their longevity of their platform and their products. From my perspective, it's why, when you use old software that feels old, it just isn't right. And the fact that they're focusing in on some of these core features, and how do we, I think they have that unique perspective of they get to use the tools to build the tools, right? And so they're in this constant feedback loop, and they're probably feeling a lot of the pain at their scale that a lot of their scaled organizations feel, and they're really starting to address that.
100%. I am looking forward to Point B eventually. Like, hopefully next year we'll get some Point B announcements out of the ones that have come out of Point A.
Yeah, 100%, totally agree. So there's all that from the product front, and then of course, if you've been living under a rock and just discovered Zoom today and just discovered this Atlassian thing, their other big messages were around cloud. And it's the expansion of that platform of, they can support 20,000 agents in Jira Service Management. They can support 35,000 users in Jira and Confluence. They continue to build that out at scale. The other things that were in there was, last year they announced data residency for your core Jira data. Now coming soon is data residency for all your app data, which, as anybody that operates this stuff at scale, you need apps to make this stuff run. And especially for those folks where data residency is a big deal, having it across all the data you put in Jira is actually what customers need. They don't just need part of their data resident in their country of choice. They need all of their data, and they're going to bring that. And then HIPAA compliance was announced last year for targeted 2022. They talked about it again this year. So I'm going to...
People are asking for it.
I know. I'm going to hold them to it. Like, let's get that HIPAA compliance. Yeah. I think part of that has to do is probably intertwined with that data residency when you start to think about where and controlling all that data. So, yeah.
I think you can say for sure that cloud's going nowhere fast. I mean, not going anywhere fast, but like they said a long time ago, like cloud is the way, and they have stood by it through and through. And as soon as, HIPAA compliance comes out, I think that'll be a huge milestone in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. And if you look at their, at their annual reports and kind of how most users come to Atlassian, the numbers are staggering on how many just drop right into cloud, right? So for all of us that have been using this stuff for years and, gritted our teeth a few years ago, cloud is here, and it's actually pretty exciting. So I was excited by that too. Cool. Well, that's enough of me blabbering on and on. Sarah, you were kind of focused on our teamwork and culture. what did you see and what kind of got you excited about it?
Yeah, thank you, Thad. So here we are, and we're talking about teamwork culture. So what is it exactly? Well, it's an ideal set of tools, practices, and people working together to enable a connected and engaged work culture. That sounds amazing, right? Well, we want to know how we get there. So I set out in search of an answer to try and figure out what it actually can be for us. And I attended several sessions at Team 22, and I'm going to tell you what I learned and how we apply it at ISOS. And I'm going to give you an example of how easy it is to build into your routine so that you can incorporate on a daily as well. So right off the bat, we noticed in the keynote that culture was the front and center piece of information. Why is that important to us? Well, it shows us that culture is the forefront of what people are thinking about. Yes, we have awesome tools to use at our fingertips, but what are we doing to develop the people that are actually using those tools, and what does that mean for our teams at work? I'm going to talk about some of the common themes that help build teamwork culture, and one of the most common themes was employee utilization and engagement. So now more than ever, studies have shown that our employees are craving recognition, appreciation, and growth opportunities. And why do we think that is? Well, it's because our work environment has changed. Our employees are experiencing an all-time high level of burnout and exhaustion. We work different schedules, we have different roles to adjust to, sometimes combined roles, and we've been doing whatever it takes to get the job done. But if you think about it, has it even been acknowledged or recognized? And beyond that, is there a plan for growth or career development? We all know to increase the teamwork culture, we need our employees to be engaged. And we're going to talk about some solutions to achieving just that. So managers, I want to start off with you, and I want to ask you to think about what hat you're wearing when you manage your team. Are you wearing the boss hat, or are you wearing the coach hat? If you're operating as a boss, that's okay. But maybe you should take a chance to open up yourself to a new approach and think about a coaching mentality. Think about asking the questions that help people to create their own solutions rather than just telling them what to do. We are encouraged to be present and listen and have meaningful conversations, showing that you care. During your one-on-one meetings, are you keeping a lot of endless notes, a log that goes on and on forever? Why not utilize a tool to help you be more efficient that both your employee and the manager can track their goals, career paths, and development so you're not scrolling through months of meeting notes? Set up a system to document the deliverables, the goals, the notes, the kudos that say when it comes time for our annual review, we're not bogged down by recency bias. We do a good job of this at ISOS by utilizing a tool that does just that for us. We use 15.5. I'll talk more about it later on. But now we know that daily routines are essential for our productivity. Boy, oh boy, is it easy to get distracted. Studies have shown that once we break our focus, it takes about 20 minutes for us to get back in the zone. 20 minutes of work time. So when planning your day, know that the ultimate sweet spot for being efficient is a solid 90 minutes of continuous, uninterrupted work. Now, I know 90 minutes seems like a lot, and if you're unable to commit to that time limit, short bursts of 25 minutes solely focused on one thing is good, but 90 minutes is really what we're aiming for. And when I say uninterrupted work, I mean that you're coming to your task prepared. You get your snacks, your beverage, and your music ready before you even sit down. Make sure that you're also taking a bio break, and oh yeah, your phone. Put it away. Leave it in another room. This allows you to get into a rhythm, and therefore productivity rises. We all know that checking off tasks makes us feel good. So in order to do that, we're going to take our to-do list and add it to our calendar. We tend to do the work that is listed out on our calendar more often than not. So we want to match the action item that we pulled from our email and combine it with our to-do list to create one calendar entry for each one. So now you have an idea of what your individual team efficiencies can accomplish, but what about your team as a whole? Well, team meetings can be transformed from an unengaged 30 to 60-minute meeting to a fully engaged meeting if we remember that we're looking to move the focus away from all about the work to all about each other. The work is going to be there. The connection and the collaboration are what we're seeking. And then the team can anticipate the needs of their teammates. We become that high-performing team that everyone wants to be. We can create this by asking the right questions, understanding each other, and collaborating to be on the same page. Having awareness of what others are working on, offering support, or even asking for support has a huge benefit for everyone involved. Now, as I mentioned, we need tools to help us accomplish this. So in talking about teamwork cultures, we have to include the tools that help make that possible. So here at ISOS, we use Trello, and it allows us the ability to create team-specific boards, and we can add questions, topics, or ideas for discussion on team meetings. That helps organize our thoughts, and we can move through the meeting more effectively. Then we use Slack to communicate with each other. I know other organizations use Teams, but same idea. It allows for quick and easy conversation back and forth with each other. No need for email that's too long, and it's a really nice informal tool that doesn't always require a lengthy response time. And then 15.5, as I mentioned, we utilize it at ISOS, and this is a tool that helps with talking points, questions, work in progress, and planned work, as well as a pulse score for the organization. It's helpful for our one-on-ones and at an organizational level. And then finally, Atlas, which was announced last year but re-announced this year. Hopefully in the near future, we'll be able to utilize this tool to raise awareness of projects, successes, challenges, and celebrations. Knowing what others are working on at a glance is going to continue to increase our collaboration efforts going forward. And then all in all, I learned so much at Team 22. Teamwork culture was a wonderful focal point, and I appreciate the opportunity to share my findings with you. But remember, your team members are seeking appreciation, recognition, and growth opportunities. Plan your day out, add your to-do list to your calendar, and move the focus from all about work to all about each other. That's my take on team culture.
I love it. And it's one of those things that there's two things people want to know from Atlassian generally when I talk to them. They want to know, one, Atlassian, how do you use the tools, right? So everybody's like, Atlassian, show me how you use it. The other one is, Atlassian, you have an amazing culture. Tell us how you do that. And so they've exposed on both fronts. So I love, Sarah, the take on that and kind of the findings, because a lot of what happens at Team isn't tools. Again, it's about people. It's about processes. It's how to be more effective, right? And I love that. Bringing that back to us. I think that's fantastic. Cool. So we're gonna shift gears a little bit, and Tracy, as the director of Agile Services, you're obviously out on the Agile front.
I am all up in Agile Business with Atlassian for sure.
Absolutely. So what'd you see, what'd you hear, what got you excited?
All right. So like you said, I'm not going to redo their keynotes. They're out there. They're great to hear. I found their approach to Agile and DevOps. I mean, that's a big area to cover, right? And they break it out into discover, develop, and operate, which is great because it's a nice way to kind of think about the whole cycle. And then you can start to kind of plug in the tools that they're announcing and where they belong. But one of the things I found really fascinating, and I'm almost surprised that I'm so fascinated by it, is that they talk about software development teams as like the center of the universe. Everything kind of revolves around the software development team, which is fine. I mean, they are a lot of software developers themselves. That's where they started from. It's huge in industry in general. Like every organization is an IT organization. But I'm super curious if they are going to branch out of that, or if that's like really deep in their culture and will always be that way. Because I think of some of our clients are, they're their cyber physical systems, and they've got hardware teams, and they've got, you know, just a different spin on how they discover and develop and operate as they go to market. So that's one thing that, you know, I've been in the Atlassian world for a while, and that really struck me in their keynote about how the software teams are so central to their universe. So, which is great. We've got a lot of good tools, but like, hey, we're unlocking the potential in every team, and I want to challenge Atlassian to like really stretch themselves about how they identify, you know, every team. We've got strategy teams, we've got all kinds of teams out there. So that's my take on that aspect. The other little point I wanted to make for those of you who couldn't attend in person was we had a lot of opportunity to connect with people, like Sarah was saying, that's so core to operating, being in a business, you know, connecting with others. And one of the things that also kind of struck me was that people are looking to scale and grow. It's one of the two challenges that we hear most from our customers that they're facing, is that they have a lot of growth happening, and they want to ensure that everybody in their organization is like fully adopting the tools that they are paying for with Atlassian. And so there's a lot of interest out there about how to do that and how to connect with partners like ISOs to make sure that, you know, it's not just about licensing or getting the tool, you know, stood up and people, you know, onboarded, but really like what's our mindset look like? Is that impacting how people are adopting the tools? Is that impacting how we're able to scale out our practices across the organization? So I was really encouraged by the amount of curiosity out there for all the people in the who attended. They're interested more and more about, hey, how do we get the most out of our tools? And it's not always an answer that the tool itself can answer. So those are the big ones. And then the last thing I'm going to say before I'm going to rope in Nick Nader, because I know he has some thoughts on the DevOps side. At the end of last year, Tempo, which many of you are familiar with, it's one of the biggest marketplace vendors out there, acquired ALM Works, and ALM Works makes structure. And the reason that's particularly interesting to me is I am, you know, eyeballs deep in Jira Align and helping organizations scale their agile practices. And we've got Jira Align, which is just best in class for the enterprise level organizations looking to scale. But then we've also got, like I call them the smaller guys, big picture. And now with Tempo acquiring structure, I'm really interested to see how those two, it's a healthy competition in my opinion. Those guys bring some really interesting solutions to market. So I'm expecting to hear more and more about that over this year as we go into the next team.
Yeah, like Tracy, I think you hit something there, which is like, hey, we've got Agile at massive scale solved, and we've got kind of entryway with roadmaps for Jira, but there's this big
advanced roadmaps,
there's this big gap right down the middle where a lot of organizations fall. That you know, it's kind of an interesting space for us to figure out, you know, who and what are the right fits of tools to fit in.
For sure. It's not always an easy thing to navigate, because it's not just what are the features of the tool. It's like also looking at like, well, what's our mindset? How do we operate? What are our practices? Where do we want to go? And what are the things that are limiting us from getting there? And it's not always the tool that's the answer. So, so yes, you hit the nail on the head there. Now, I do want to rope in Nader, because Open DevOps is something that Atlassian has been talking about. We were just talking like, we weren't sure, did they coin that phrase? Was that an industry phrase? At the end of the day, Open DevOps is where it's at. And I believe that the tool vendors that understand that teams will use the tools that they prefer to use, and the vendors that make that easy to happen, they're going to win. Like, people are going to flock to them. So Nader, tell us what you learned about Open DevOps.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Tracy. Yeah, and there's always been like a focus on tools and integration between tools to make sure that they speak to each other and connect to each other and fill gaps. But I do want to continue that theme of, methodology and concepts because there were a lot of great DevOps sessions and speaking sessions during team. But I wanted to drill into one specifically that talked about really common problems that DevOps teams have been having and CI/CD pipelines have been having, as well as some really good industry best practices from Atlassian's perspective and some key industry players' perspective on solutions to those really common problems that people and DevOps engineers incur. And some of those problems are, one, a lack of a nice macro view of that pipeline, right? All these DevOps engineers typically focus on their section of the pipeline, whether that be the coding portion, the testing portion, the deployment portion. Everybody kind of has this micro view on what they're trying to accomplish within their CI/CD pipeline. And nobody really has that larger view that's going to identify gaps between people and between their tools and between their processes. So like backing up and looking at that macro view of your entire pipeline really creates visibility for those issues that can occur between those different micro level views and engineers that are actually, performing that pipeline. And then the other couple ones are an overly complex pipeline, right? We all know that DevOps engineers can really try to shove as many tests as possible into their pipeline as they can because they want to get as many metrics and information out of those tests to make sure that they're closing all gaps and errors in their code. But overly complex pipelines come with a cost. And a lot of people start to not even understand the output of all of their tests, right? All of those metrics. They're not sure what's actually wrong. And they have to dig into a lot of logs and a lot of errors to figure out, what that complexity is actually spitting out on the back end. And then the last thing they like to talk about was anti-patterns, which is a great term that I really love that essentially means an infamously wrong way to do things that is happening quite often. So identifying those anti-patterns is something that you can do by increasing that visibility and kind of backing up and looking at your pipeline from a macro view. So some of the solutions and some of the best practices that they were chatting about on this session, one that resonated with me the most is the why behind your pipeline and the actions in your pipeline and the changes that you're performing to your code. We talk about why, like Tracy talks about why all the time during her Agile conversations, because that makes sense, right? You want to back up and understand why you're executing something in regards to your overall strategic goals at that team level. And DevOps is the same way. We should be backing up and asking, why are we actually taking these actions within our pipeline? What are we actually trying to deliver to our customers? And that also means, identifying what value you're actually providing to your customers, right? Like backing up and getting subjective judgments of the actual change value on your customers. So that also feeds into a continuous feedback loop from your customers, right? So backing up, asking why, asking your customers, did this actually do what you wanted it to do? And did it actually give you the value that we were trying to, give you through those changes to our code and product?
I'm so happy because it's, in my opinion, you can never go wrong when you ask why, because like you're getting to the source of it. So I love that they're incorporating that into DevOps.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the methodology is where DevOps falls short, or DevOps teams rather fall short quite often, right? Like everybody's focused on the tools, the connection between tools, seamless integration, full automation of their process, but nobody's backing up and being like, is this methodology right? Like, are we actually delivering that value that we're trying to our customers? And so the visibility between the tools and the people is super important, and being able to back up and ask why is going to be able to help you identify kind of those tool chain connections and those tool chain gaps, as well as those people and process gaps and connections that you have within your CI/CD pipeline.
Love it. Love it. I think one of the things you put in there, or that you both mentioned, was, and I will put it in my own words, but engineers are fickle. They love the latest and greatest tools, and part of what they love to do is adopt the latest and greatest tools. And so, Atlassian's approach is great. We won't win your hearts and minds that way, but what we will do is create the platform with Jira where all of that data can aggregate, and now we can get a consistent view. You want to use 12 different tools throughout your enterprise to build your code, have at it, right? But we will all come together in Jira to be able to see and look at those outputs. And that's what Atlassian's enabling. I think that's so powerful. I love it. I will, just a reminder, put your questions in the Q&A box. We have one sitting out there. Haven't forgot about it. It came in pretty early, but we will definitely get to all the questions. So fire your questions in Q&A and we'll get there. So we're going to flip, and we're flipping back to Nick Nader again. Nick, you kind of had an eye on DevOps, but you also had an eye on ITSM. So what'd you see out there?
Yeah, definitely. ITSM is one of the big focal points of Atlassian, focus points for us here at ISOS. ITSM is ever growing and ever expanding. And I think that the overall theme, watching the keynote, which was really cool, because they made some cool announcements on upcoming features that they're releasing to their service management product. But watching the keynote, watching all the sessions for ITSM, I really got the feeling that they are in that final push towards true enterprise service management, right? Like they started in infancy when JSD originally came out and was called Jira Service Desk. And ever since they renamed it to service management, they've been acquiring tools left and right that fill the gaps that really bring them to a full enterprise service management tool that extremely large teams can utilize and can compete with those other big players in the enterprise service management market. So a couple of things I wanted to highlight around them pushing towards that. First off was improving their reporting. Everybody knows that Jira reporting, like you said, that isn't the best out of the box, and service management is in the same boat, or has been in the same boat pretty recently, where, out of the box, it's primarily focused on SLA reporting. So their announcement of analytics and data lake is huge for Jira Service Management, because Jira Software and JSM are the two products that they're starting data lake with. They're going to expand it to all of their products, but analytics and data lake is going to allow you to combine data from Jira Software and Jira Service Management and kind of get this mixed bag of data between your software development teams actually performing those changes, resolving those incidents, fixing those incidents, and your service management team resolving all of your other service requests and essentially being that intake system for your IT requests. So analytics is essentially built off of their Chartio acquisition that they acquired, I think, about a year ago. So it's going to have a ton of out-of-the-box charts and reports and dashboards that came with Chartio and Atlassian built on top of. But they're also opening it up so that it has, custom SQL queries for data lake and that mixed bucket of data that you have, so you can create those custom SQL ones, as well as no-code SQL report creation. So they're going to have a full interface for people that don't want to dig into the nitty-gritty of, an SQL syntax, but still want to use that power and query that data lake of data that they have. So a lot of new customizable reporting coming to JSM that allows you to mix all that data, including the ability to mix external data with JSM and Jira Software data here soon. So data lake is extremely cool because it's cross-product. It's also cross-instance. So if you're a large enterprise service management team, you can have multiple Jira Service Management Cloud environments, and you can actually mix all of their data into the data lake as well. So no issues if you kind of have a couple siloed or federated instances within the cloud. And then they're also going to push towards integrating this with other business intelligence tools like Tableau and Microsoft Power BI,
Huge.
so that you can always have that power.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, and I remember seeing the report builder. They demoed that, and it was super easy. So it can be very powerful. So it can be SQL driven, and it can also be no code, low code approach too. So really exciting on that visualization engine. It's going to be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I know I'm going over on my time a little bit here, but just a couple other hits around the ITSM space is one, they acquired Percept AI for a virtual assistant. And we all know that, agents don't like answering the same question 1,000 times. I know I don't. So when they get those extremely tier 1 simple requests, the virtual assistant is essentially going to learn from every single interaction and be able to answer those very simple questions for your service management team. Any large enterprise service management teams need some kind of virtual chatbot to handle the very common FAQs or how-to or troubleshooting questions that come in through their help desk. So that's going to be a big heavy hitter because it's got a natural language processing engine that's going to learn throughout your process. And you can kind of have a no code customization to match your methodology of service management, right? So it's not like one way is the right way for the virtual AI. You get to decide how it's answering those questions as well and have input into that. And then they've made a lot of changes to change management recently, pulling in things like deployment tracking and deployment gating so that you have kind of control with your connection to your CI/CD pipeline and that DevOps pipeline, so that you can kind of automate change requests based off of deployments, as well as like gatekeep when those deployments actually go live and go out to production based off of approval of those change requests as well. And then everybody knows about their Proforma acquisition that happened fairly recently that was tied into Jira Service Management at the end of last year in December. So that form builder kind of takes request forms to the next level, right? Dynamic sections, conditionalized fields, as well as forms in the middle of your workflow, so that, you know, when it gets approved, you can have a form attached to it automatically if that needs to happen in the middle of the process. And then the last thing I want to shout out is Halp for conversational ticketing. This is something that they just tied into the license for Jira Service Management. They acquired it a little while ago, but it was still its own separate license, and now it's part of JSM. So they're really kind of buttoning up their license tiers and models so that at that enterprise tier, you really get everything they have to offer bundled into one license for enterprise service management, and are really dragging them up into that upper right corner of the Forrester report as an enterprise service management tool.
Love it. I mean, there's so much, you know, you can feel the energy of Atlassian putting behind ITSM and just service management in general. It's pretty exciting for sure. Nick, it's been a while. How you doing? You kind of sat in on the open work management piece and followed those tracks. So what did you see there?
Yeah, so open work management, it's sort of a few things. It's the concept of open work management, and then it's also the tooling of work management that Atlassian has, right? So if you're anything like me, when you create a project in Jira, you ignore all that stuff. So I'm going to focus in on what it is a little bit more than maybe some of the other folks have on what they listen to. But you know, so work management from a templated standpoint or from a tooling perspective brings your business teams into Jira with pre-templated projects. So the non-software, the non-IT teams, right? Marketing, HR, finance. So it's a great way to give them starting points. Maybe they don't have overly complex processes that they need to build, or they don't know that they need to build yet, and they want to just sort of get started. That they are great for that. But that stuff's not actually, you know, really new. I think that was more of what they communicated last year, along with, you know, lists and calendars, timelines relative, like a shrunk down advanced roadmaps, boards. But there are some cool things that they did talk about this year that are new for work management projects. Like Nader had mentioned, the acquisition of Proforma now brings forms into the open work or the work management project. So that's pretty cool. And then these two other features, hopefully, I think maybe these are pilots to bring into the larger library of Atlassian Jira projects. But if you have a team, you can see if they're online. So are they actively working in my work management project in Jira, which is pretty cool. And then a multiplayer mode. I don't know how many times you guys refresh your screens to look for updates on tickets, but the inline editing on lists in work management is now called multiplayer mode, and it's real time. So you don't have to refresh, which is actually pretty cool. Yeah, multiplayer mode.
Cool. I'm glad you explained that, because if I had just seen multiplayer mode, I would never have guessed that was the thing that I really wanted, that I could do inline editing, right?
I want to try to put the Konami code in and see what happens.
It's nice. I hit Command R all day, right, to see what's changed. So that's pretty cool. But that's what work management is from a tooling perspective. They focused a lot on what is this open work management concept relative to the different tooling that they have, right? You've got Jira with the work management projects, but you have Atlas, you have Trello, you have Confluence. So how do these tools play into open work management? So Atlas, you know, being a project management status product, right? The what you're doing, why you're doing, how you're doing it, and who's doing it. So bringing, you know, anyone who's running a project that's not just software teams or teams in the IT space. You know, you have marketing projects, you have finance projects, all kinds of projects. From a Trello perspective and a Confluence perspective, it was mostly new features. Some of these might sound a little cutesy, but they're actually kind of cool. And they made some claims around engagement, but Confluence will allow you to have emojis in page titles and headers, and also reactions on pages. Like, all right, it is what it is, but according to them, they've seen a huge lift in engagement for those pages. And I could see that. You get, I joke that Confluence, you almost need a librarian, right? It just grows exponentially, like so quickly. And if there are cool ways to identify pages or that, should be socialized more, emojis, why not? Confluence also will have an easier way to embed videos, which is nice. They're building on this smart links feature across several different products in Trello and Atlas and Confluence, where you can just plop in links to from supported tools, and it will dynamically show you, a preview of that when it's supposed to, right? Instead of just a link, which is awesome. And then really the last thing is around Confluence presenter mode. So, if you're ever presenting a Confluence page, you've got the navigation bar, the page tree bar to contend with. You might have all your open tabs. So there's actually a presenter mode, similar to like a Google Docs presentation, right? Or a Google Slides presentation or PowerPoint.
So Nick, I saw when they're talking about presenter mode, the way Atlassian uses it, again, back to how do you use the tools? They said for their internal meetings, they don't do slides anymore. So they do their presentation as in presenter mode in Confluence. And they said at some point in the meeting, they tell everybody, okay, now go make your
hop off Zoom,
what you saw. And then they come back and finish the meeting based on comments. And it allows people to have a voice that, sometimes some of us are louder on Zooms than other. And so it gets everybody to participate and let them be heard. And I thought that was kind of neat. So
yeah, and it plays right in with what Sarah was talking about, not around so much the tooling, how to use the tools, but also how to grow that culture. And right, they talked about, they make everyone hop off Zoom video. Everyone goes, they're still on Zoom, but everyone goes to the Confluence page. They run through it, and there's no talking, right? There's no me dominating a conversation on Zoom. It's all commenting, and then it's all saved, so you can refer to that later. So, open work management concepts were their big push, and they really wanted to talk about the differences between Trello and Jira relative to the different types of teams that may be working in them. Because you may ask yourself, why do I use Trello versus Jira? And so, they've hammered that point home. They've come up with a pretty good track on it. You don't need to train anyone on Trello. There might be a little bit of training around Jira usage, but you can just go in Trello. If you don't want a rigid, a workflow, if it's task oriented, if you're using, your email box as your task list, go use Trello. So that, they're starting to split out where do I use this tool and why do I use this tool versus another.
Yeah, I love that. And, as a longtime Jira snob, when they bought Trello, I was like, I don't need Trello. I couldn't live today without Trello. It's just a great way to organize my thoughts, even my own personal Trello board, and then sharing with the team without kind of that rigid structure of Jira, right? It's much more friendly to ideate on and really kind of talk through in a free fluid motion. So I'm glad, glad they continue to hit that hammer. I think that's good. Okay. So we've got 3 questions out in Q&A, which is great. But right now we're going to do a quick lightning round, and then we're going to go to Q&A. So super simple. Lightning round question number 1 is, what new feature, product concept did you see that excited you the most? Sarah, go.
I think the number 1 thing that I'm most excited about is using Trello efficiently, making those changes and being able to communicate with your team.
Love it. Nick Sommerfeld, what did you see?
Yeah, it's Atlas. I've seen a lot of companies mess around with hour-long status meetings that get stale and things like that. I think Atlas is going to be very cool.
Love it. Nick Nader.
Well, I'm a data addict, so data lake and analytics is going to be very cool to have Atlassian have their own business intelligence tool instead of having customers rely on an app and another app license. They can combine multi-product, multi-instance stuff. So it's just really cool to have one bucket for all your data, especially for enterprises.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. Tracy.
Yeah, so in the whole hour-long-ish Agile DevOps keynote, at the very end, there was like this mic drop moment for Jira Align, because it wasn't mentioned until the end when they talked about OKRs. So objectives and key results, they enable a clear line of sight into what's most important. And then Jira Align is the only tool that I've seen that so nicely ties all the work that's tracking towards those OKRs in one nice, great, visible spot. So I'm not only excited about that, but that I know Atlassian uses OKRs internally. And I also happen to know that not everybody at Atlassian yet is using Jira Align. And so I'm curious to see how OKRs end up in the rest of their tools, or how that's influenced in the rest of their products. Also, side note, if you are like, OKR what? There's a book called Measure What Matters. Grab it, take a look.
Love it. Yeah, OKR is not a new concept, been around for a long time, but it's simple but hard to do right.
Oh, so true.
Yeah.
Simple is not easy.
No. And then I'll go last. I was pleasantly surprised, and Nick Sommerfeld, you hit on a lot of this, but how much love Confluence has gotten. I felt like in the last few years, there hasn't been a lot of Confluence love, and all those announcements, the other one, automation for Confluence, I thought that was super powerful on, bring that whole automation engine that's in automation for Jira to Confluence is wonderful. And just how they're trying to keep that, all of these features, thoughtful features going into Confluence, because it can really become the backbone for an organization. So I love all the love and care it's getting over there.
Yeah, some other features I didn't even talk about, right? Because there's just a lot of Confluence stuff going on right now.
A lot of Confluence. It's a good time to be a Confluence fan. Okay, last question, and then we'll do our Q&A. So last lightning round question is, for the audience, what is the must-watch session to go replay? And I will say we'll answer this, and when we share out the slides, we'll have links back to the presentations. And I'll lead it off. Mine was the keynote with Scott Farquhar. It's called Culture Eats Strategy for Breakfast. Like, the one thing you can always bank on for an Atlassian keynote when it's one of the co-founders, one, it's going to be really good content, but two, they can't help themselves and they preview everything that everybody else is going to talk about. So if you want like a little bite-sized taste of everything that's going to be shown at the event, and everything that's new, go watch that. And if you see something that's like, aha, I like that, then go watch the other keynotes around it. But it gives you a good broad view. And then also, he's talking about culture eats strategy for breakfast. That's Peter Drucker's quote. Big in the Agile community. I know you're a big fan, Tracy. But yeah, it's just a great talk. Tracy, I'll pass it.
So I've got a shout out to Rich Chung and Eddie Park, Wells Fargo. They do a 20-minute presentation on how they transformed at scale, which is almost hilarious, but man, they lay out it's been like a 5-year effort for them. So this is the Agile transformation at scale and the art of deliberate disruption. It's a good 20-minute insight into what Agile transformation is all about. So take a look there.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. Nick Nader.
So I picked DevOps pipeline best practices using an open tool chain for all the DevOps freaks out there. This was great. It was hosted by an Atlassian, but it had key players from like Snake and Mabel, who had some really good insight. It was what I was talking to those best practices from. So just watch the whole thing. It's great. That conversation was fantastic.
Cool. Sarah, what'd you see?
So my choice is Embracing a Coaching Mindset as a Leader by Patricia Omokwe. Wonderful session about being a great leader, and a quick guide on 5 skills to improve your coaching leadership abilities. Go check it out. There's so many good ones on teamwork culture, but I guess I'll pick that one as my top.
That's top of the list. I love it. Nick Sommerfeld, how about you?
Selfishly, I'm going to say go watch the session I was in with one of our clients, but for open work management, Actually, the keynote, though, Work Differently Together, New Vision for Work Management, touches on just about everything I did and so much more. Talking about everything from Confluence, Trello, Atlas, and then that open work management concept around teams, different types of teams.
Dig it. Okay. One last little housekeeping bit. I lied that we'd get right to Q&A. One last little housekeeping bit was, if you want to learn more or contact us, so we have a link here to how to get the most value from your Atlassian investment. So it's a great white paper, I think 10, 12 pages. It's a good read. Take a spin through it, check it out. And if you want to contact us, isostech.com/contact-isos. So reach out, happy to have any conversations, give you any demos, or just give you our thoughts on anything out there. And Marianne, thank you for putting the links there in the chat as well to make it easier for folks. Okay, no more housekeeping. So now we're going to get to Q&A, and I'm going to take them in order. So Sean McGuire asked, what is Atlassian's response intention regarding porting apps to cloud, but at a much lower feature base? For example, Insight is a fraction of the original after over a year of Atlassian ownership. So I'll take a stab at that. Nick, I see you raise your hand. You go for it.
I kind of wanted to hear what you had to say. No, but this is a major concern for pretty much anyone doing a ground to cloud migration, right? Is my server app or Insight feature set going to make it to the cloud? Is the data going to make it to the cloud? And I think the rub here is Atlassian acquired Insight a year ago, right? And it has been over a year since they've owned it, but when they acquired it from Mindville, the cloud version was nowhere near what the server version was, right? And that's simply because for Mindville, the server version had been around for years and years, and their cloud version was really, really new and had just released essentially, right? So the feature set just wasn't where the server feature set was when Atlassian acquired it. And so Atlassian has to prioritize building out, so developing from scratch in the cloud, the feature set to match their server one, right? Which includes a lack of reporting, which is on their roadmap for Insight. It includes also just natively integrating it into their product, right? Because to have it a part of the JSM license, they have to natively integrate it into the Atlassian cloud product. They have to figure out database storage. They have to tie it into the automation engine. They have to tie it into the Jira query language. So there's a lot that goes into the native integration of their cloud product. And then they can start prioritizing adding on the feature sets that the cloud product lacked when they acquired it. So I think it's just a time thing and a development thing. Like Atlassian has a lot of moving parts going into Jira Service Management right now, but they are working on it, right? Like if you check out that cloud roadmap, they've got reporting for Insight Asset Management on that roadmap. They've been improving the importing functionality over the past year quite extensively. They've quadrupled how much you can import into it and pulled up the Insight Auto Discovery tool for your network configured devices. So I think they've come a long way and they have a lot planned for this year. So definitely don't sleep on that cloud roadmap. Like the Insight stuff is definitely getting up to par with where server was.
I would say everything you said is 100% accurate, and I would just add a different flavor, which is Atlassian created a problem for their app vendors. So the problem is before all this cloud stuff, I had to write my app one way. When they created cloud, they said, okay, we're going to use this Connect API, which is fundamentally different than how the server data center apps work. So now exactly what Nick said is Mindville had to create their app once, and then it's like, oh my gosh, okay, cloud's for real. Now we should go write it. And they literally had just released it when Atlassian acquired them. So they have to rebuild that whole product, and then that product is dependent upon how much of that API Atlassian exposes, right? And so that's where a lot of their effort is how do I expose more and more API so that all of these apps can catch up? And they've created, I'm sure you guys have seen the announcement of this new thing called Forge. So when we talk about data residency for Jira and Confluence data, then we talk about data residency for the apps. What Forge does is gives us computational residency, which is now my apps run within the Atlassian deployed cloud versus if I deploy them in Connect, they could run on my server under my desk. sitting out in Russia somewhere, if like that's where my data could be going, right? And so I think Atlassian, to Nick's point, has all these moving parts. They are 100,000% committed to getting feature parity, but I think they're trying to do it the right way so that they can maintain that that computational residency as well. So like Nick said, it is a strong focus for them, and we beat them up on that all the time too. Like, you know, we're customers as well, and we have customers, so we advocate for our customers on that front. Okay, Joseph, let's see. With Atlassian Analytics Data Lake concept, one thing that we Atlassian users should also focus on: easy way to pull custom reports, meaning without the needs of acquiring another third-party add-on. And I think I'm just going to cut this one off. I saw their report builder. It looks really powerful. The analytics data lake will be part of the product. I don't know what that means from a licensing perspective yet, but we agree, Joseph, and you know, our expectation is that it will be an easy way to create and even self-service reports for your less technical users. Christopher, not Team 22 specific questions, but on the topic of BI data, we got a lot of data folks in here. Love it. Are there any limitations getting to cloud Jira data from on-prem BI tools? We have on-prem BI tools, Cognos and Tableau. Looking at Jira server data today with some things in between to mine the data. Either of the Nicks, you got an answer for that one? Basically, how do we from cloud, how do we feed a BI engine like Cognos or Tableau?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I know for a fact Tableau has a cloud version of their connector app on the marketplace. So if you guys are using that connector app for Tableau, you have a cloud version, we can migrate that connection. It's essentially just reconnecting Tableau to your Jira Cloud once you get there, and then pulling down your Jira Cloud data to then manipulate it within Tableau. I don't think that the Tableau actually stores much in Atlassian's cloud, so there shouldn't be a huge difference between your connector for on-prem Jira and your connector for the cloud Jira. I'm not familiar with the Cognos one specifically, but it really all comes down to how you're integrating it on server and whether if you're using an app to integrate it, that app has a cloud equivalent and a migration path for that cloud equivalent, or if it's a custom integration, if we can recreate that utilizing the cloud API. And the cloud API is very extensive. So like more often than not, we can recreate the kind of connections that you have with your BI tools on server, but in the cloud once you get there.
Yeah, and I think that's great. And I think, you know, the way I understand this new data lake offering on cloud is part of its feature and its job is to be able to pump data into other into other data stores so that you don't have to use the embedded data lake from Atlassian, that you could pump it into your own data sources and or point your own visualization engines at it. So, you know, we have that as well. And then we thought we might get this question. So Chris, thanks for asking it. Did any cloud outage impact the conference? Did the cloud outage overshadow any presentation or any part of the conference, right? So for those that haven't seen it, there was a cloud outage. I think when we got the final numbers from Atlassian, it was 400 customers were impacted with the outage. The way we got the debrief was it was a deploy gone bad. So somebody, I mean, this was complete human error. There was no penetration of their cloud environment. There was no data integrity issues. That it was a deploy gone bad. A delete script got run and impacted some users. 400 accounts. We were one of them. And you know, fortunately, we know how this Atlassian stuff works, and we're able to recover. But I wouldn't say there was a dark cloud. I think it's something that Atlassian is very, very focused on. You know, we feel good as a partner understanding the root cause, that it wasn't, you know, fundamental architecture problems, but it was more of a people and process problem, right? Like that's kind of how we led this conversation. And so, you know, those are ones to get their arms around from a control perspective. So kind of leave it at that, but, you know, it was definitely unfortunate timing. How about that at best? And then one of the things, so I know there were a few questions and a lot of topics around ESM. I just kind of want to, one, thank everybody for spending the time with us. And two is We have another an ESM webinar coming up on May 18th. We're doing it with Forrester, and it'll be the same approach where it won't turn into a commercial for Atlassian, but we really want to talk about the future of ESM and where we're going. So if you enjoy the format and want to have kind of real conversation about it and not product demo, that webinar will be for you. If you want product demo, contact us and we'll do that for you as well. But thank you, everybody, and thank you to our panelists, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, everyone.